Good evening, friends. Wherever you are tonight, know this. What you are about to witness is not just a story, it is a moment that shakes the way the world has seen Africa for generations. For decades, the Sahel was written off as a land of endless sand, scattered bones, and dreams drowned beneath gunfire. Analysts debated stability from faraway capitals. Foreign soldiers arrived with smiles and speeches, only to leave behind dust and disappointment. Villages vanished overnight, terror reigned. And then, one morning in October 2025, everything changed. From the sun-scorched plains of Tindiban, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger rose as one. Borders, languages, doubts, all disappeared beneath a single roar. The roar of Africa fighting for itself. At the heart of it stood General Ibrahim Traoré, soldier, visionary, the living heartbeat of a continent tired of being underestimated. Under his command, the Alliance of Sahel States acted not as fragmented nations, but as a single force, moving with intelligence, precision, and unity. No foreign advisors, no Western satellites, only African minds, African hands, African courage. For years, the people of the Sahel had been told to wait. Wait for peacekeepers, for aid, for salvation that never came. That waiting ended that morning. AES drones flown by African engineers scanned the desert. Intelligence captured the enemy's positions, convoys, hidden tents, weapons caches. At dawn, rockets lit the sky. Supply lines vanished. Fighters who once terrorized villages were cut off, isolated, and blinded. Within hours, the Battle of Tindiban was over, a victory executed flawlessly, without a single foreign command. The world had expected chaos. What it received was clarity. Desert storms gave way to the hum of coordination. Every missile, every advance, every maneuver was precise, guided by intelligence, not instruction manuals from abroad. The first wave struck mobility. JNIM convoys were shredded by guided rockets. The second wave demolished supplies, fuel, food, ammunition, the lifeblood of terror. The third phase brought precision strikes from Mali's Air Force, Niger's ground units moving in synchronized patterns, all eyes guided by African drones. And then, the silence. That silence that followed the storm was not empty. It was heavy with realization. Africa had defended itself. The Sahel had become its own salvation. Across the region, villages that had long been deserted now celebrated with tears, music, and drums that had not sounded in years. Men embraced strangers, women waved scarves in the sun, and children ran through streets once shadowed by fear. For the first time in decades, people were not mourning the future, they were reclaiming it. In the capital of Burkina Faso, Traoré spoke on national radio. His uniform was dusty, his eyes sleepless, but his voice carried steady and firm. "The Sahel has been bleeding too long," he said. "Today we stop the bleeding with our own hands. This victory is not mine. It belongs to every mother who refused to give up, every soldier who stood his ground, and every young African who dared to believe we are enough." Across Africa, the words spread like wildfire. Across the world, they spread like a warning. Western analysts struggled to understand what they had just witnessed. How could three nations under sanctions with limited resources achieve a level of precision that decades of foreign-led operations had failed to accomplish? Some whispered about hidden aid, secret technology, or outside sponsors. Traoré responded simply with a faint smile. Yes, we had help from our ancestors. That phrase, calm and poetic, spread faster than rockets, reverberating across continents, challenging assumptions and narratives that had lasted for generations. In the days following Tindiban, the Alliance of Sahel States did not rest. Meetings between Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso led to the first ever Joint Security Council, not in Paris or Brussels, but under the Saharan Sunday. The council was not symbolic, it was structural. The message was unmistakable. Africa would no longer be a chessboard, it would be a player. Across the Sahel, soldiers trained young recruits in AES doctrine, intelligence, mobility, unity. Schools taught it, academies studied it, and the people began to live it. Refugees returned home. Trade resumed. Villages rebuilt. What had been broken began to flourish. The doctrine was no longer just a battlefield strategy. It had become a philosophy, a way to reclaim dignity, independence, and pride. Images of the soldiers of Tindiban standing together, rifles slung, eyes forward, dust on their uniforms went viral. The caption simply read, "Africa fights for Africa." For viewers in the United States, Europe, and beyond, it was a revelation. Africa was not a continent to pity. It was a continent to respect. A generation that had been portrayed as weak now looked stronger than any army the world had seen. Musicians, writers, and artists celebrated the moment, transforming Tindiban into legend. Songs were written, "We rise from red dust, and we do not bow again." Murals appeared overnight in cities from Lagos to Nairobi to Johannesburg, portraying Traore as not just a soldier, but a symbol of unity and self-belief. Intellectuals compared Tindiban to turning points in world history, a moment when oppressed people reclaimed agency and reshaped the narrative. Even in Western capitals, reactions ranged from admiration to fear. Military analysts, policy experts, and journalists all asked the same question: if Africa can defend itself, what else can it do? The old assumptions that the continent needed guidance, control, and supervision were suddenly obsolete. Africa's victory at Tindiban had rewritten the rules. Traore did not view the victory as an endpoint. He understood the battle was only the beginning of a greater struggle, the fight against doubt, division, and dependency. In private meetings with young officers, he said, "The next war will not be against men with guns. It is against the chains in our minds, the divisions among our people, and the belief that we cannot define our own destiny." Across the continent, this perspective ignited a quiet revolution. Governments, militaries, and civil societies began exploring the Tindiban model. Engineers in Niger designed homegrown drones inspired by the battle. Academics debated strategies in classrooms. Communities rebuilt in ways that emphasized self-reliance and collaboration. For the first time in generations, Africans were shaping their own future on their own terms. Meanwhile, Western media scrambled to respond. Articles appeared warning of rising African militarism. Diplomats reassessed aid programs. Analysts debated geopolitical implications. But to the people of the Sahel, those warnings sounded hollow. They had reclaimed something far greater than land or resources: autonomy, dignity, and the knowledge that they could succeed without permission. Refugees returned to towns that had been abandoned for years. Trade corridors reopened, schools reopened, markets buzzed. Young men who had once fled north toward Europe now enlisted in local defense corps, eager to rebuild and protect their homeland. What had begun as a battle transformed into a continental awakening, a declaration that Africa would no longer wait for the world to grant it legitimacy. The global reaction was electric. From Caracas to Cairo, from Lagos to Hanoi, people celebrated AES as proof that the post-colonial world could act independently. Analysts in Europe and America began asking questions long ignored. Could Africa's unity in Tindiban inspire a new economic and political order? Could the same discipline that led to victory on the battlefield transform governance, education, and innovation across the continent? Traore's answer was always simple: we are not rising to impress the world, we are rising because no one else will do it for us. And so, the Sahel began to rebuild. Agricultural corridors replaced bombed-out wastelands. Villages once abandoned now thrived. Former soldiers became teachers, farmers, and engineers. Communities that had lived under the shadow of violence now walked in the sun with hope. The message was clear: Africa had remembered its strength. The shock of Tindiban was not just military, it was cultural, political, and psychological. For decades, the continent had been underestimated, its potential ignored or dismissed. That day, the world saw something it had long refused to see: Africa, capable, autonomous, and resolute. Even as celebrations continued, quiet reflection took hold. Could this unity endure? Could the continent sustain the collaboration that had made victory possible? Traore understood that the true battle was ongoing, not of missiles and gunfire, but of trust, leadership, and shared purpose. And he met it with the same principle that had guided every operation: intelligence, mobility, unity. Across the Sahel, people whispered a new promise. Never again would they wait for foreign permission to fight their battles. Across the Atlantic, audiences who had long seen Africa as a place of struggle began to see it as a place of courage, innovation, and dignity. For the first time in living memory, Africa controlled its own narrative. The battle may have ended in the desert, but the awakening had only begun. From classrooms to marketplaces, from rural towns to bustling capitals, the story of Tindiban was not just about war. It was about reclaiming identity, independence, and respect. Africa was no longer asking for a seat at the table. It was building its own, and the world, whether ready or not, was watching. For General Ibrahim Traoré and the people of the Sahel, the message was clear: victory is measured not in lives lost, but in hope restored. And the lesson for the world is just as simple: underestimate Africa, and you underestimate the future. The desert may be quiet tonight, but its story will echo across generations. The roar that began in Tindiban was not of gunfire alone. It was the roar of Africa remembering who it is, proud, sovereign, and unstoppable.